2:31 in the morning. A man calls 911 and says someone broke into his home and shot his wife.
Somebody broke into my home. Somebody broke in my home and shot my wife.
Are they still in there?
I don't know.
Okay, what's the address?
County Ham Court, Pitt City, Ohio. Please hurry. Please hurry.
Okay. What are you seeing?
My wife she's got 2 shots to her head. There's blood everywhere. Oh my God.
The dispatcher is barely 3 questions in, and something is already wrong. He knows she was shot twice in the head. He knows exactly where the wounds are. He doesn't stumble over that detail, doesn't discover it while he's talking. He leads with it. And when the dispatcher asks him to slow down and repeat himself, he doesn't break down. He gets impatient, like the questions are wasting his time. That call lasted over 20 minutes. Every single word of it would later be used against him. To understand this case, you need to know who Caleb Flynn was before that night, because the gap between the man the world thought they knew and what prosecutors say he did is what makes this so disturbing. 12 years before that 911 call, Caleb Flynn stood on the American Idol stage and told millions of viewers that he loved his wife more than anything in the world.
Thing that makes me unique, you know, I absolutely love the Lord. I love my wife more than anything. She is very, very pretty. Just, oof, I love her.
He was a worship leader at Christian Life Center in Tip City, Ohio, a town of about 10,500 people just north of Dayton. His wife, Ashley, was a volleyball coach, a substitute teacher, and by every account, a genuinely warm person. They had 2 daughters. They were the Flynns, the kind of family that anchors a small community. That image would take 12 years to build. It would take one night to destroy.
Okay. I checked this right here, nothing else.
Okay.
My daughters are in the bedroom over there, they're still asleep.
Okay, have you checked on them?
The 911, yes. Right now, no one else comes in here, period. No, every door. No one.
Okay.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Okay, sit. You want to sit down?
No.
Okay. Take a breath.
Is she gone?
Look at me. Take a breath. Okay?
I can't.
Look at me. I need you to breathe, okay?
Try not to touch much. What do I do with my daughters? What do I do with my daughters?
When the first officers walk through that door, Caleb Flynn is on his knees in the dining room, sobbing, vomiting, barely holding himself together. On the surface, it looks like a man who just lost his wife. But while he's being attended to, other officers are already moving through the house, and what they're finding doesn't line up with a single word of his story. Ashley Flynn is in her bed in the master bedroom, shot multiple times in the head, 2 shell casings on the floor near the foot of the bed. The room is completely still, no signs of a struggle, no drawers pulled, nothing thrown around, nothing that suggests anyone was looking for anything, just a woman dead in her bed, in a room that otherwise looks untouched, and there's no forced entry, anywhere. Not a single broken window, not a damaged door frame, not one point on that house where someone forced their way in.
Water's in around there, not together. They get responded. Yes, one person only.
Oh, that door's open over there.
Yes,
That back door's open. Is that lead outside? Because I can't see. Is that a closet? Okay.
The center console of the truck.
It is. Should we have him? Hey, look at this. Watch out. Oh no, it's paint. Do you see any blood along the truck at all?
Back doors out.
Hey, is someone watching him? Somebody needs to be watching him.
What they do find is a side door to the garage, wide open, and blocking it from the inside is a heavy refrigerator that someone had pushed out of the way to get through. Think about what that means. Someone would have had to shove that refrigerator with enough force to clear the door in the middle of the night, while a man, his wife, and 2 children were all inside that house, and not one of them heard it happen. Inside the garage, Caleb's truck is sitting there with the center console hanging open. That's where he stored his 9mm handgun. The gun is gone. When officers ask him about firearms in the house, he walks them through it. A shotgun, a .22, a pellet gun, and a handgun he says is in the glove box of his truck. But it wasn't the glove box that was open. It was the center console. He got the location wrong on his own gun, in his own truck. Investigators wrote that down.
Can I call somebody?
Awake.
Both of them?
Yep.
Check with 230.
Is this just a room? Is this just a room? Okay.
RP is requesting a check done. Rebecca, Deshawn, and
Clear.
boyfriend is at the location causing a problem.
Somewhere in the back of that house, 2 little girls, ages 9 and 11, are still asleep. According to Caleb, they slept through everything. The gunshots, whatever struggle may have happened, their father's 911 call, all of it. Officers check on them. They're okay, but now there's a problem nobody prepared for. How do you get 2 children out of an active crime scene without them realizing what's happening? There are cruisers outside, police tape going up, strangers moving through every room of their home. A drone is deployed to sweep the surrounding property in thermal imaging. The fog that night is thick. They fly the perimeter anyway, looking for any person, any vehicle, any trace of someone who ran. They find nothing. The only story the evidence is telling is the one happening inside that house. When detectives sit down and go through the 911 call, 3 things keep coming back to them. The first is the detail. Caleb tells the dispatcher his wife was shot twice in the head before any examination has taken place, before any officer has even reached the bedroom. He doesn't say she's hurt, he doesn't say there's blood, he gives specifics. 2 shots to the head. For someone who supposedly just stumbled onto this in the dark, that's an unusual amount of precision.
My wife is, she's got 2 shots to her head. There's blood everywhere. Oh my God.
The second thing is his tone. People in real shock sound a certain way. Disoriented, circular, unable to track a conversation. Caleb sounds controlled. When the dispatcher asks him to repeat information, he doesn't cry harder or lose the thread. He gets short with her. That's a different kind of emotion entirely. And the third thing is a single exchange buried in the middle of that call. The dispatcher asks where he was when the shooting happened. Caleb says he was with the children who never woke up, the children who slept through gunshots fired inside their own home. That answer doesn't make the story better. It makes it harder to explain.
Where are you guys at in the house?
I'm in the bedroom with her right now.
Okay.
My daughter's in their room.
So you are not with the children?
I was with the children when it happened.
Okay, but you're not with them now?
No, they're in their room. They're not even awake.
Around 4:30 in the morning, Caleb agrees to go to the police station to give a voluntary statement. He rides up front, no handcuffs, still being treated as a witness, not a suspect. But inside that station, something changes fast.
I need you to stand up when we place that behind us. All right.
Step forward.
You want evidence?
What's that?
Turn
What
around for me,
evidence?
sir.
Detectives start asking the questions the crime scene raised. At some point, a detective steps out of the room and comes back different, quieter, more deliberate. Caleb notices immediately. He asks what changed in the last 2 minutes. The detective won't answer. He only says that evidence evolves and that there will be a day in court. That's it. No further explanation. Caleb is left sitting with that. He wouldn't have to wait long to find out what it meant. As investigators dig deeper, a motive begins to take shape, and it doesn't come from forensics. It comes from inside the church. According to investigators, Caleb had allegedly been having an affair with a 23-year-old woman on the same worship team. She sang on the same stage where he led the congregation every Sunday morning, and Ashley knew. In the days before her death, she sent a text message that became one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire case. 3 words: "I can't anymore." She was done. She was ready to walk out, and in a town where everyone knew the Flynns, that meant everything Caleb had built was going with her. His position at the church, the respect of the community, the life he had put on display for over a decade, the devoted husband, the man of faith, the worship leader, all of it gone the moment Ashley decided she was finished. Prosecutors believe that's what made her a threat he felt he couldn't survive. Not physically, publicly. 4 days after Ashley's death, on February 20th, 2025, Caleb Flynn is arrested. The charges are murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, and 2 counts of tampering with evidence. Bond is set at $2 million.
Turn around for me, sir. We're not going to discuss that here. Okay. There's
Put your
a time
hands
and a place
together
that
for me,
we're
like
gonna-
if
Did Patrick call you?
What's that?
Did Patrick call you?
Now, I didn't know that he was calling me, so.
His lawyer's supposed to be calling right now.
Okay, yeah. We'll get in touch with him.
I'm being cordial and being cooperative, so I'm not being.
I'm not answering the questions. You want to give him a hug real quick? Then go ahead and do that.
He's fine. He's strong. I'm sure it will come up. There's absolutely no evidence. They know how much you love that one. You're gonna be okay. He's strong. You're Sandy. He's strong. You're okay. This will work out.
Sir, do you have anything that's going to poke or stick me? Any sharps or anything?
He hasn't eaten in days. Can you get some water at least? Whatever you're taking him.
Don't give him food.
Make sure we hold non-priority calls then. I got a fraud that came in.
Relax your arms for me for a second, sir. Can you spread your legs for me real quick?
At his first court appearance, he holds back tears and tells the judge he just wants to take care of his daughters. He pleads not guilty to all charges. The community that once watched him lead worship is now watching him answer to a murder charge, and the silence from the people who knew him best says everything. His church doesn't defend him. His pastor's statement doesn't mention his name once. A close friend speaks about him entirely in the past tense.
Is there anything you would want to tell me about that?
Sir, I just want to take care of my daughters. I'm not at risk.
I understand. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, the court is going to order a $2 million blanket bond in this case, covering all of your charges. Should you post bond in this case, the court will order that you be on pretrial services electronically monitored house arrest. Furthermore, the court will order that you will have no contact whatsoever, directly or indirectly through a third party, with. You are not permitted to speak to them in any way, shape, or form. That includes electronic communications.
Ashley Flynn would have turned 38 on February 24, 2025, 8 days after she was killed. Her memorial couldn't be streamed. The debate around her death had become so heated that a public gathering felt impossible for the people who loved her. Her 2 daughters are with their maternal grandmother. The case against Caleb Flynn rests on the 911 call, the stage scene, the phone records, and those 3 words Ashley sent in the days before she died. The trial hasn't happened yet, but the evidence has already told a story, and it's not the one Caleb called in at 2:31 in the morning.